Okay, so thanks for waiting. We're just here to introduce you to, so my name is Dominic Jackson. I'm the IMS Stream Chair for this conference, and we're delighted to say we've got two presentations today, which will finish off the IMS stream for the actual conference itself. And first one we've got is we're on Stream 2, Session Q, and it is about embracing DevOps for IMS. And this is going to be a session where we're leveraging some Jenkins plugins, that kind of thing, so that you can deploy IMS resource definitions in a less disruptive way. And there's also going to be examples of how to look at checkpointing and try to reduce that. And then finally, I think Subhash is going to tell us a bit about database changes in the enterprise DevOps, sort of automating it in a CI/CD pipeline. So Subhash Sakar is a senior product manager for BMC software, and I think currently he's responsible for the Army data for IMS portfolio of products and solutions. And he's been in mainframe for well over 16 years. If you've got any questions for the session, then please, you are able to unmute yourselves and you can ask that question verbally during the conference, and Subhash said he welcomes that during the presentation. So please shout up if you've got any questions and just unmute yourself, and we will have a little discussion at the end if there's any time. So just to also mention that this session is recorded like all the other sessions that we've got on the conference. So over to you, Subhash.
Okay, thanks, Dom. Thanks for the introduction. Let me share the slides. So yeah, welcome everyone to this session. As Dom mentioned, this is a session on DevOps for IMS, right? And how we can implement DevOps practices for IMS. As Dom also said, I work for BMC Software, and I'm working as a senior product manager or owner for the BMC AMI data for IMS suite of products or solutions. If you want to connect with me over LinkedIn or X, formerly called Twitter, these are the two QR codes that I posted over here, and this is the QR code that you can see, the bigger QR code, right? On the bottom right hand side of the screen is the QR code for my session. So I think this QR code will take you to the feedback page. Okay, perfect. So let's start. So the first question that probably everybody should ask is, what is the value of DevOps for mainframe organizations, right? I mean, let's talk about mainframe first. What is the value of DevOps for mainframe organizations? So one of the key findings from BMC's 17th annual mainframe survey, which, by the way, some of you might already know is the industry's largest research study. The survey reveals that 76% of organizations that implement a mainframe inclusive DevOps toolchain report seeing value in under 12 months, right? So some of the most recognizable and measurable benefits of implementing DevOps on the mainframe, according to the survey, are number one, greater stability and security. And this is probably expected, right? I mean, DevOps is people and organizations adopt DevOps practices for greater stability and security. Number two, the point number two, in terms of the most recognizable and measurable benefits of implementing DevOps on the mainframe included improved application quality. That this again is expected. And the third point came out to be quicker application deployment. I mean, all these points are expected, right? I mean, so the survey revealed nothing new, right? These are the expected benefits of implementing DevOps on the mainframe. Now, many mainframe organizations worldwide have successfully implemented DevOps on the mainframe. Now, DevOps is not a new buzzword anymore, right? I mean, this is not a new kid on the block anymore. Almost, I guess, if not all, but at least most mainframe organizations worldwide have successfully implemented DevOps on the mainframe and are already reaping rich rewards. And some of the widely accepted benefits of DevOps adoption on the mainframe include things like, achieving improved deployment frequency, faster time to market, TTM, popularly called as TTM, lower failure rates, shorter lead times between fixes, and improved mean time to recovery, right? MTTR. Now, as per the 2023 BMC mainframe survey report, 50% of respondents to the 2019 survey reported the use of DevOps practices on the mainframe, right? And this number, this 50%, this number has actually risen to 62% in 2023, right? So the survey number in 2019 for the 2019 survey was 50% of respondents saying that they use DevOps practices on the mainframe, and that number actually grew to 62%, which is quite a significant increase, right, in 2023. Now, the top two reasons given were the need to rapidly update core applications to keep up with business demands and the drive to improve application development quality. That again aligns with the 88% of respondents who find more frequent updating of applications to be very useful. So there was a marked growth in the number of respondents citing improved IT infrastructure as the most valuable DevOps benefit for their organization, right? So, looking at these facts, figures, statistics from the survey, and I think all the other DevOps related surveys tell the same story. It's not only the BMC annual mainframe survey that tells the same story, but the other relevant surveys, on the platform also tell the same story. It's a story of adopting DevOps practices on the mainframe and how quickly people realize the value after implementation of such practices, right? So, and over here on this slide, I think I have explained most of these things. Just these two interesting figures, right? According to the 2023 BMC mainframe survey report, if you see over here, 71% of the large shops reported that they have adopted DevOps. And when we say large shops, we have defined large shops as those which have between 10,001 to 50,000 MIPS, right? And the number for all shops adopting DevOps on the mainframe was 62%, as we saw, right, in the 2023 survey. The number was 62%, which by the way is a good number. So as we can clearly see, there are numerous catalysts for mainframe organizations adopting DevOps practices on the mainframe. Now, to support digital businesses and meet the constantly evolving customer demands, enterprises must strive hard to bring new high-quality apps and services to the market, right? Now, that means that enterprises must constantly adapt and innovate their current processes and technologies, right? And in most cases, DevOps adoption seems to be the answer. right? It's definitely one of the answers. So an ever increasing use of DevOps practices on the mainframe has improved the ability to adapt to demands and update mainframe applications more frequently versus pre-DevOps adoption, right? Now, again, as per the 2023 BMC mainframe survey report, I talked about this, right? The DevOps adoption rate for large shops, that is shops between 10,001 to 50,000 MIPS, was 71%, whereas that number was 62% for all shops. Okay, so what is the value of IMS in a mainframe and enterprise DevOps strategy, right? Now we have looked at the adoption of DevOps practices on the mainframe platform as a whole. But the question now is, since we are talking about IMS and this is an IMS centric session, the next question probably in our mind is, what is the value of IMS in a mainframe and enterprise DevOps strategy? Definitely including IMS in your overall mainframe and enterprise DevOps strategy, plays a significant role in the adoption of a more inclusive and complete DevOps structure in the enterprise, right? And that's a no-brainer, right? If you are saying that you want to have a more inclusive and complete DevOps structure for the entire enterprise, you cannot leave IMS out of the picture, right? You have to have IMS as a part of that strategy, right? So that's the value of IMS in a mainframe and enterprise DevOps strategy. So enterprises should include in their DevOps adoption strategy IMS data, applications, and system management workflows. That should help IMS organizations to reap the maximum benefits of DevOps adoption and also create a more inclusive and complete DevOps structure. So it is therefore significant that IMS organizations worldwide embrace DevOps practices, right? Now, having said that, what are the different ways to embrace DevOps for IMS? And this is going to be the central topic of this webinar, right? The different ways by which we can embrace DevOps for IMS. So I'm going to split this, different ways of embracing DevOps for IMS into certain key points. And the first point is leveraging IMS specific Jenkins plugins. So let us first take a look at the business challenge, which is to improve the performance of your IMS and DB2 applications, right? Because for most of the shops, both the subsystems work in conjunction, hand in hand, right? So as to say. So many application programs. So if we talk about the business challenge here, which is the core business challenge, is how to improve the performance of your IMS and DB2 applications, right? So many application programs that were written several years ago are still in production, right? This is common for mainframe organizations worldwide, and those programs were efficient at the time they were developed. But as we all know, IBM hardware and software have changed drastically since those programs were first written or last modified, right? And this could be a long time ago, right? However, those programs probably continue to take IMS checkpoints and or DB2 commits at the same rate that was set when they were first written or last modified, right? Now, so what's the problem with that? The problem is applications that are still taking too many checkpoints or commits are driving unnecessary expenses, right? They're causing resource wastage, and they're even elongating the response times, right? And conversely, applications which are not taking enough checkpoints or commits may be holding locks for too long a duration, which again in turn leads to performance degradation, right? So the key aspect is to be able to find the applications that are taking too many or too few checkpoints or commits, And that is a challenging task, right? I mean, it's easier said than done, right? Now, so we have looked at the business problem, and the solution is pretty simple. The solution is, we should be able to identify. We need to be able to identify programs that use too many or too few IMS checkpoints and or DB2 commits. And we need to do this first before we could actually go and fix them, right? I mean, identify them before you can fix them, right? Is the mantra over here. Right. So now, there are different probably there are different there could be IMS plugins, different IMS plugins from different vendors that could help you do the job. Since I am from BMC, I'm going to talk about one of the BMC Jenkins plugins. So there is a Jenkins plugin called BMC AMI DevOps for application checkpoint analysis. And you could use this in order to exactly solve the problem that we talked about in the previous slide, right? So it is very easy to install, configure, and use the plugin, and I'll show you that. By allowing your developers to use the plugin, you can actually choose to give the power in the hands of your application developers, so that they can see and fix application checkpoints or commit issues during the development stage itself, right? So that fixing those issues is much cheaper, right? So from a DevOps perspective, you are actually giving this power in the hands of your application developers, right? So they know what are those rogue applications, rogue in terms of taking either too many checkpoints or commits, or taking too few checkpoints or commits, right? So the developers can identify and fix those application programs, right, during the development stage itself. Right? And this is the Jenkins plugin. So if you take a look at this image, I think it's a bit small, but if you can just take a look at the exceptions on the extreme right hand side, there's this column called exceptions. This report, basically, this is a graphical report, right? Very easy to read. It gives you the names. It lists down all those programs, IMS as well as DB2 programs that either takes too many checkpoints or commits, or too few checkpoints or commits, right? And it also throws a nice graphical pie chart type of representation, right? So that it's easier to read. And you can also view the raw report directly from within Jenkins. So this is the job log, the raw spool data that is pooled within Jenkins directly by the plugin, and you can view the raw report directly within Jenkins, right? And as you can see, this is the same report which was depicted over here in a graphical format, but it's basically the raw format, right? So applications that are taking too many commits or too many checkpoints, or for that matter too few commits or too few checkpoints, are being listed over here. So we have a commit frequency report for DB2. We have another commit frequency report for IMS. So you can easily identify those application programs and then take actions accordingly, right? So as I said, this application, this plugin is very easy to install, configure, and use. You just go to Jenkins, search the plugin, and and then there's an install button. You probably click on it, and since we are leveraging the power of Jenkins, all the Jenkins plugins are quite easy to install, configure, and use, right? So if you want to learn more, I'm not going to talk more about the plugin here in this webinar. I just gave you an idea about what the business problem was and one of the solutions that you can use to solve that business problem, right? But if you want to learn more about the plugin, how to use it and things like that, this is the QR code to the plugin documentation from the Jenkins website. You can check that. We also have a nice YouTube video on the plugin, and this is the QR code on the right hand side. You can check that too, right? And I'll be sharing this presentation, and hopefully this will be available to everyone. So people can check these resources at their leisure if they want to, right?
Shubhashish, just a quick
Yeah,
question.
yeah, Tom.
That's
Yeah.
all right. Do you for this Jenkins plugin? I'm presuming you are. It is really in the pipeline, as in development. So it's not something that you would want to put into live. It's something purely for the development cycle. Yeah. I'm only thinking because actually knowing what checkpoints you're doing. I mean, we can get it from other means in live, but presumably it's mainly meant for development cycles. Yeah.
I think yeah, that's a good point, Tom. You can use it in your development environment just to catch those, before those issues creep up into production. But
Yeah.
as I said, one of the problems that we have noticed is, these applications were written probably in 1960s, 1970s, right, 1980s, and they're still in use, obviously, right? The problem that we have noticed is, when these applications were written, maybe 20 or 30 years ago, they were written to take a certain number of checkpoint or db2 commit, right, which was probably working well when those applications were written maybe 20 or 30 years ago. But now the problem is, IBM hardware and software have become so much advanced that those checkpoints or commit points that were set maybe 20 or 30 years ago probably don't work in today's day and age, right?
Yeah,
So
indeed. Yeah.
yeah. So if those programs are in production, they probably continue to take checkpoints or commit points at the same rate, right? And it would be a good idea if we could just also be able to identify those programs and make them more efficient in terms of how many checkpoints they should actually take versus how many checkpoints they are actually taking at this point. Right.
And that was the reason for the question, really, because if we can go into live with reports, then that might be quite useful. But I know this is just for development use, but that's fine. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. No problem. That's a very good question, Dom. Thanks for the question. Okay. So another business problem and another Jenkins plugin story. This time the business challenge is slightly different, right? And IMS systems programmers, sysprogs, always have to deal with the business challenge of making dynamic changes to the IMS resource definitions without the need to do IMS gens, right? And more so in today's world, right? Where that elusive downtime simply doesn't exist anymore, right? So whatever resource definitions you do, you have to do them dynamically without bringing down your IMS system. So the challenge for the IMS sysprogs is to be able to produce the most value by eliminating tedious work. Number one. Number two would be ensuring that higher quality changes are made. And number three, all dependencies are automatically considered and updated as needed, right? So this is the core challenge of IMS sysprogs, and this has always been the challenge of IMS sysprogs for decades, right? And it still continues to be the challenge. So for example, let's say you want to dynamically add a database element type to the IMS system, right? What if you have access to a Jenkins plugin that does exactly that, right? I know you can do this in many ways, but since we're talking about DevOps, creating DevOps friendly CI/CD pipelines, what if you have access to a Jenkins plugin that does exactly what you want to do? In this case, let's say you want to dynamically add a database element type to the IMS system, right? So let's go through the images present on this slide and the next. So this slide and the next slide, I've got a few images. Let's go through these images, right? So these images pertain to the pertain to another Jenkins plugin, IMS Jenkins plugin from BMC. Other vendors could have similar Jenkins plugins, but again, being a BMCer, I'm going to talk about a BMC Jenkins plugin, right? So again, these images, as I said, pertain to second Jenkins plugin that I'm going to talk about, and that second Jenkins plugin is what we call BMC AMI DevOps for Change Manager for IMS-TM Jenkins plugin, right? So this plugin, BMC AMI DevOps for Change Manager for IMS-TM Jenkins plugin, it helps communicate with BMC AMI Change Manager for IMS-TM, a BMC product, which was formerly called Delta Plus, on the mainframe, right? So this plugin at the background, it basically communicates with Delta Plus or BMC AMI Change Manager for IMS-TM on the mainframe, so that as a user, you can create and edit delta lists, right? Check a delta list against the IMS control region, execute a delta list to implement changes, log all the changes made, and finally being able to submit or run jobs on IBM ZOS using the ZOSMF REST API. Now, I have talked about delta lists quite a bit. Now, for those of you on this call who are probably not familiar with what a delta list is, and this is specifically a BMC product term, right? The BMC AMI Change Manager for IMS-TM product, or the Delta Plus product, right? So if you are not familiar with what a delta list is, I'll just give a brief introduction about what a delta list is, so that you at least understand, right, what this plugin is trying to do, right? So a delta list is nothing but a collection of elements and the individual IMS change instructions for each element, right? So for example, in our case, a database, right? And we are trying to dynamically add a database, right? So the element would be a database, and the change instruction for that element is to be able to add that database dynamically to the IMS system, right? So that's what a delta list is. It's a collection of elements and the individual IMS change instructions for each element, right? A delta list tells BMC AMI Change Manager for IMS-TM, also formerly Delta Plus, how and which IMS resources to add, modify, or delete, right? So a delta list can contain as little as one element or many thousand elements in the same list, right? So you can create one delta list. It can contain maybe one element, or it can contain hundreds or thousands of elements. Now, delta lists may perform actions against IMS resources such as applications, transactions, databases, route codes, let's see, terminals, LTerms, subpools, MS names, MS LTerm, MS link, and MSP link. So we cover a lot of IMS resources, right? So you can write instructions for all these IMS resources in the delta list. Now, BMC AMI Change Manager for IMS-TM will provides you additional functionality to reload a DMB, including a DEDB randomizer or SCB, execute IMS operator commands, and also embed a delta list within a delta list. So you can basically nest delta lists, right? You can have a delta list within a delta list, right? Now, coming to these four images, over here, if you see, 4 different sections have been highlighted in this 4 figures. So why I say 4, because 2 images on this slide and 2 images on this next slide, and each of these images have been given a certain number, right? So what are these numbers? What do these numbers suggest? So let's start with number 1. So number 1, if you see over here, it suggests that this is the section of the Jenkins plugin where we specify what action the user wants to take, right? So for example, over here, as I said, we want to add the action of add and the element type is database, right? So we want to add a new database to the IMS system using this Jenkins plugin. So this section, the number 1 section, denotes what action a user wants to take using the plugin. Going back, number 2, it's very simple. It's the section number 2 is what are the mainframe connection options, right? You know, your helper name, your port number, you know, your TSO user ID, password, all those things, right? Your mainframe connection options. Coming to number 3, what are the BMC AMI change manager for IMSTM options, right? Because as we saw, this Jenkins plugin at the end, in the background, it will basically go and interact with a BMC product called BMC AMI change manager for IMSTM, also formerly called Delta Plus, right? So this section number 3 of the Jenkins plugin is basically that section where you want to specify the different options for BMC AMI change manager for IMSTM. And on the 4th section of the plugin, this is basically after you have specified all the information in sections 2, 3, and 1, the 4th section is basically the generated job information, right? So this is the job when you submit when you execute this plugin, this job gets submitted to the ZOS, right? So again, as with the previous Jenkins plugin, the previous Jenkins plugin that we saw, this plugin is also very easy to install, configure, and use. And so for example, over here, over here, if you want to learn more about the plugin, so again, the leftmost QR code will take you to the plugin documentation on the Jenkins website. The middle QR code will actually take you to a YouTube video on the plugin. And then we also have a solution brief about the plugin, which is hosted on bmc.com. The QR code on the extreme right-hand side will take you to the solution brief about the second plugin, right? The solution brief talks exclusively about the second plugin. It doesn't talk about the first plugin. Right, and again, I had talked about delta lists, right, exclusively. So if you want to learn more about delta list and what they do, this is the BMC documentation. If you just want to, if you're just interested, right? Okay. So before moving on, I just wanted to pass on some more information about, all about the second plugin that I'm talking about. All IMS macros are supported by the Jenkins plugin to help make IMS system changes, right? So the changes requested are dynamically implemented using BMC AMI change manager for IMSTM technology, and the various delta list element types supported by the Jenkins plugin include applications, transactions, databases, route codes, terminals, LTerms, and subpools, right? And as a note, BMC AMI change manager for IMSTM, the product that actually works in the background, for this plugin, which is basically our old Delta Plus product, and its predecessor, the Delta IMS product. So Delta Plus is the newer version of the product, and we have changed the name to BMC AMI change manager for IMSTM. But before Delta Plus, the predecessor was Delta IMS product, right? So they both fully support the use of IMS directory and catalog in both online and batch environments. So I just wanted to pass that information because we know that we have to move to an IMS managed ACB environment by the summer of 2025, right? So every vendor is trying to be compatible with IMS managed ACBs. Okay, so I think I've talked fairly about both the plugins. If you want to learn more, again, these are the resources which you can take advantage of. But before moving on to the next point, let's conclude the discussions on the Jenkins plugins by talking about why only Jenkins plugins, right? I mean, we could have built other plugins too. Why did we build only Jenkins plugins? Now, that's a question which I have come across a few times. I'd be very honest. And my answer has always been that, Jenkins is one of the most popular open source automation tools that are available in the market today. I mean, even today, it's a very popular open source automation tool, right? So that is why Jenkins has been BMC's tool of choice for the continuous integration CI or CI workflow automation of integrating important workflows and capabilities into the software development lifecycle, right? Now, when I say that, um, that doesn't mean that we are not open to work with other tools and methodologies. We are. As customers, you probably come and tell us what you need, and we assure you that we'll seriously investigate how to fulfill your requirements. So if you have requirements, if you are using some other tools, and if you want some plugins based on that tool which you are using, please tell us, and we will do the investigation on our part, right? But as of now, we have received requests or requirements on to build plugins for the Jenkins platform, and we have done that, right? Again, before concluding, before moving on to the next point, I think I've talked, I've beaten Jenkins plugins to death over here. But before moving on, if you go to the Jenkins website and just search using the word BMC, right, you will come across the list of all the BMC supported plugins. And I'm not talking only about IMS plugins, right? All the BMC plugins that are hosted on Jenkins website will be listed if you just search using the word BMC, right? And I think I captured this screenshot maybe 1 month before, right? Close to at least a month. It has been at least a month, right? And this was and this was the number that existed probably a month before. The number could have changed. I've really not checked on the website recently, but the number could definitely change, right? I mean, it was 9 probably a month before. It could have increased by now, right? So if you want to take a look at all the different plugins, just search using the word BMC, right? Okay, perfect. So moving on, the next point is that I want to talk about is, and let me see how I'm doing on time. Okay. The next point that I want to talk about is reducing the risk of DBD and PSB changes. Very important for IMS procs, right? And IMS DBAs. So, in a DevOps environment, it is particularly beneficial to have the capability that enables application developers and DBAs to see the impact of proposed changes, number one. Number two, generate the necessary change jobs. And number three, easily undo mistakes. These three capabilities are key for IMS system programmers, application developers, and DBAs, especially in a DevOps environment, right? I want to see the impact of the proposed changes that I want to make. I want to have a capability where the tool creates the necessary change jobs that I just go and simply submit to get the work done. And I also need the capability to be able to easily undo mistakes if ever mistakes creep in, especially in the production environment, right? So these features, these capabilities help reduce risks before change implementation and has got numerous associated benefits, right? So capability to perform impact analysis enables the DBA to understand the consequences of changes before executing them, thereby helping prevent potential costly errors in the production environment. And this also helps universal DBAs to better understand how things work with IMS by identifying the action required to make the change, and also how the thing they're trying to do will result in that action and the likely outcome also, right? Before it actually happens. So, you can think about, and there are there are probably many tools available from different vendors that can help you manage risks in your IMS environment, especially with especially managing the risks associated with making DBD and PSB related changes and associated changes. I'm going to talk about a BMC product. So you can think about incorporating a BMC product called BMC AMI Change Manager for IMS into your mainframe inclusive DevOps toolchain. Right. So for example, over here, these are the 3 points that I talked about, right? So BMC AMI Change Manager for IMS. These are the 3 features that help the user reduce the risk of DPD and PSB changes. So impact analysis, this shows the user what will happen and why. Then this product will generate change jobs for you so that you don't miss steps. If you do those JCL generation steps manually, you can miss steps, but let the product do it for you so that you do not miss steps or you do not make any other mistakes. And this product also gives you undo capabilities to reverse undesired changes if they ever happen, right? And then this is a screenshot about impact analysis that shows what will happen and why when a change is made, right? So for example, over here, right? So for example, partition level reorg needed, right? And it also tells you the reason, right? So it basically gives you a detailed impact analysis report that shows what will happen if you try to make a proposed change, and why that particular occurrence happens when a change is going to be made, right? So you have the power to analyze an impact analysis report at your hand, at your disposal. And as I said, in the second point over here, right, generated change jobs. So BMC AMI Change Manager for IMS generates jobs for you to implement changes. Again, here is an example of a job that we generate, right? So we generate JCLs for you to perform a specific action that you want to do. And all the DBD and PSB changes that you do using BMC AMI Change Manager for IMS are done in what we call a project, right? So every change that you want to do, to your DBDs and PSBs and all associated changes, you have to create something which in BMC AMI Change Manager for IMS term we call a project, right? So all the DBD and PSB changes are done in a project within the product. Right. So before moving further, so before coming to this slide, let me talk about this JCL generation a bit, right? Because this is pretty important, right? So to implement changes, BMC AMI Change Manager for IMS creates 4 standard jobs. Actually 5. So the first set of job is a README job. So this job documents all project changes for audit purposes. The second set of job is a setup job, right? Which makes copies of all control blocks. Which this setup job makes copies of all control blocks to be changed, completes the gens, and stores all the information in the project files. The third set of job is what we call a commit one job, right? So that commit one job commits all project changes, creates database image copies, and moves information from the project files to the IMS system libraries, right? And then the fourth set of job is what we call commit two jobs, right? So the commit to job is actually the job which activates the changes in the IMS system using BMC AMI Change Manager for IMS TM, right? The product that we saw in the previous slide, right? When we are talking about the second Jenkins plugin. So the commit to job will actually activate changes in the IMS system dynamically using BMC AMI Change Manager for IMS TM behind the scenes, right? And that job will execute any required DBRC commands to make the changes available to IMS applications. And the fifth set of job is very important, rollback, right? So that this rollback job is built to roll back changes to the starting point.
Can I
Right?
just ask a quick question?
Yeah, Tom. Yeah, please
Yeah,
go ahead.
just a quick one. This scenario here, is this, are you able to interface with the IMS catalog? So would that work with this sort of setup?
Absolutely. This product, BMC AMI Change Manager for IMS, fully supports IMS managed SAPs. Yeah, it will, Tom. Definitely.
Thank
Okay. Yeah. So does that answer your question, Tom, by the way? Okay, I think it does.
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thanks, Tom. So yeah, as I said, the BMC AMI Change Manager for IMS solution operates within what we call a project. And within this project, all DBD and PSB changes are made, analyzed, and managed, right? So again, in summary, BMC AMI Change Manager for IMS reduces the risk of making incorrect changes to the IMS environment, which is absolutely critical, right? Especially in a DevOps environment. It supports IMS developers in a DevOps environment and seamlessly integrates with mainframe inclusive DevOps toolchains, enabling change to work to the user's advantage, right? That's the power of this solution. Additionally, we have a migration capability present in BMC AMI Change Manager for IMS, which facilitates moving changes between different environments, such as from development to testing environment, right? And again, as I said, to emphasize the point, BMC AMI Change Manager for IMS fully supports IMS managed SAPs. Yeah, and taking a look at the, at the images present on this slide, from a graphical editor to IMS buffer pool tuning, I'm not going to read through all the features and functionalities. You can probably read through them. We have a nice modern graphical editor. We do IMS buffer pool tuning. I mean, when I say we, BMC AMI Change Manager for IMS, impact analysis of database changes, support for IMS Gen as well as IMS catalog, right? Activation and backout, all these things, right? And we also have a facility to interactively generate and execute IMS type 2 commands from the graphical user interface, right? It's the product supports traditional gen process. It helps easily migrate to the IMS catalog, and if you are already into the catalog, it helps you manage that environment, right? It works with IMS managed SAPs. You have the power to use scripted workflows, and obviously we have a modern interface, right? So from a graphical editor to buffer pool tuning, BMC AMI Change Manager for IMS simplifies making changes to an IBM IMS database environment, and that's the overall goal of the solution, right? Very simply, the top 4 benefits that I think of incorporating BMC AMI Change Manager for IMS into your mainframe inclusive DevOps toolchain are simplification of IMS maintenance, ease of use for supporting IMS, reducing the risk of database change errors. We saw how, and obviously reducing the skills gap for universal DBS, right? This is a growing concern across the industry, right? If you want to learn more about BMC AMI Change Manager for IMS, here is a QR code to the solution brief, right? So if you're interested, this is one of the resources that can help you. Okay, probably, I think this is my final point. The final point that I want to talk about is how you can rapidly build production grade development and or test environments whenever needed. All right. So I'll talk about the use case first, right? I mean, why are we even talking about this in a DevOps scenario, right? So DevOps adoption should help, actually, DevOps adoption should help shorten the development lifecycle while delivering features, fixes, and updates in alignment with the business objectives. So software testing plays an integral part in helping to maintain software quality at each step of the development lifecycle. Now, in a DevOps environment, quality testing is a continuous and automated process that enables continuous and faster delivery of software, thereby helping shorten the overall development lifecycle, right? And an effective quality test automation strategy must always include testing with good quality test data. So when I say good quality test data, ideally it should be production grade test data as much as possible, right? And that too in a production grade lower level environment, that is a development or a test environment, which should be ideally a production grade level, right? So that's why we are talking about this use case of rapidly building production grade development and or test environments wherever needed, right? In a DevOps scenario. Now imagine if you had the ability to create at will lower level development and or test environments from one or more production environments, right? Now you would be able to create production grade test data that can be easily deployed to multiple development and or test IMS systems, with each IMS system having the same set of databases with different dataset names, with automatic generation of DBRC definitions and ID camps allocation members, right? So you could actually make things work in your favor by maintaining historical backups of IMS databases, or in other words, what we call creating an archive, right? So basically what is an archive? It's basically a historical backup of IMS databases, and not only IMS databases, but of the entire IMS database environment too, right? So what should your archive constitute of to be of any use to you in the future, right? So an archive is a spatial backup of a database or group of databases, as I mentioned, right? It should consist of your current database definitions, for ID camps, etc., DBRC information from the recon, runtime environment modules, DBD, compression, randomizers, partition selection exits, any other exits, etc. And it should also consist of a repository to keep track of each archive, right? Which and that repository could be a repository dataset, right? So, having said that, let's enter the world of a BMC AMI backup and recovery for IMS solutions, archive image copy and recovery utility, which in short we call it ARU, right? So it is an utility under the BMC AMI backup and recovery for IMS solution, right? So what is this utility? What does this utility do? Archive image copy or archive image copy creates a point in time or PIT no outage batch image copy. No DBRC authorization is required. There is no DBR of the database, right? So creating an archive image copy is like our simulated recovery, right? So if you know about simulated recovery, you actually do all the things that you would actually do in times of a recovery, but you do not commit those changes, right? So you have an exact idea of how long the recovery might take, right? So creating an archive image copy is like that simulated recovery. So when the recovery utility performs a simulated recovery, it reads all input data sets, right? Logs, change accumulations, and image copies, but it does not write any output databases or indexes. Right. So now we took that same feature which has been in the product for many years, and instead of just reading all the inputs, we produce the archive image copy for one or more databases in a single job step. Right. So think of it as a recovery to an image copy, right? So, I have been discussing about all this as I'm going through. Recovery using the archive image copy is a two-step process. So number one, generate JCL to allocate, define, recover, and rebuild indexes for one or more databases, which is the gen JCL step. And then number two, you actually review and submit the job, right? So the gen JCL makes use of a JCL library, which is an ARU JCL DD card, where the generated recovery job DBRC commands and optionally AMS PDS commands are saved. Right. So using the archive image copy utility, you can create one or more archive image copies. The utility saves all the relevant information that is required to reproduce the same environment at the time of recovery. Using the recover function of the utility, we can establish the same environment that existed when the archive image copy was created. Right, and I'm almost at the end, keeping in mind the time. So before I end, right, I just wanted to mention that, in summary, by using the BMC archive image copy technology, you can manage multiple development and/or test IMS environments effectively. And also the archive image copy and recovery utility fully supports IMS managed SCBs, right? I just want to end by explaining about this image. This image, very aptly depicts what archive image copy is used for, right? So, while explaining about the archive image copy and recovery utility, I had talked about, if you remember, I had talked about creating archives, right? Now we need to understand that the sole purpose of these archives is to save all relevant information that should be required to reproduce the same environment that existed when the archive was created. And we have to also remember that the requirement to reproduce the environment might come up after, let's say, maybe 10 years or 15 years of creating the archive, right? Now, in those 10 years, if you take a look at this image, in those 10 years or 15 years, you might have made several structural changes to your IMS database, right? Of which the archive was created. For example, you might have increased the segment size of the HIDAM database of which the archive was created, or you might have changed the HIDAM database to a PHIDAM one with 5 partitions, and then later also decided to increase the number of partitions from 5 to 12. So over this 10 or 15 years, you have made several structural changes to your IMS database of which the archive image copy was taken, right? Now, after each of those structural changes, if you see, after each of those structural changes made to the IMS database, you have your standard image copies. But the point over here is, if you were to restore to a timestamp, right, when a structural change to your IMS database was made, your standard image copies won't help you here, right? What you will need then is archive image copies created by the BMC archive image copy and recovery utility, right? So that's the significance of the archive image copy and recovery utility, right? So I think with that, I have come to the end of my slides. I think I've stopped exactly on time, but if there are some questions, I'm ready to answer them quickly.
So if anybody's got a question, then please unmute themselves. They should be able to do that. And obviously we've got feedback. As Subhadash has just said, referring to, we've got session 2Q. So if we just scan the QR code there, you're more than welcome to put feedback in, and we really encourage that. I've just got a question, just
Sure,
regarding
yeah.
that last utility we're talking about with the archive.
Yeah.
Presumably, you've got you said for example of 15 years back that you might have made some structural changes, and presumably obviously you've got to be able to restore you must have a strategy to keep those for that length of time, whatever information it's got on it. Otherwise, if that particular recovery archive image copy is not there, then you wouldn't be able to go back. The other thing I was going to mention was, I think you mentioned that you could copy a production to a development using this technique, or that's what I understood from what you're saying. And all I was going to say was, it's in different environments. Are we saying that you can be able to just move them over, and a subset of them? And I guess it's, I mean, it can't do everything. It can't do things like depersonalize your data and stuff like that, which obviously if you took a live copy to development, that's usually one of the challenges that people will ask about.
Right. So you can definitely create the structure, Dom, right? You can use probably the same database, the same resources, right? As you have been using in your production environment. So you can definitely copy the structure to a development and a test environment. The important thing is, if you have taken an archive image copy of your production environment, right? So what the use case that we have come across is, when the application programmers try to test certain changes, they request the database administrator to create a test or a development environment for them, right? Mostly a test environment, right? And then they will test and probably end up corrupting the environment, right? And maybe after 2 more weeks, the same request comes to the DBA saying that, hey, my environment, that you had created that test environment for me, but during the testing process I have corrupted that environment. Can you restore that environment for me? Right now, imagine that DBA has to go through that entire set of steps again to create that same environment once more, right? Which is obviously time consuming and unproductive, right? But if you have this archive image copy, let the QA people do their testing, do their thing. Even if they corrupt the environment, you don't really need to worry, right? You just use that archive image copy, and just use that archive image copy, use our utility and restore the QA environment to its initial state, and give it back to the QA, right? So that's one of the use cases that our customers use this utility for. And the other question, Dom, that you had was, obviously, yeah, you have to ensure that all the assets that are needed to recover that archive image copy, maybe after 10 years or 15 years, are preserved, right? And our utility actually does that. This was definitely not a webinar where I talked about the utility tech, from a technical standpoint. But if people are interested, they can reach out to me, and I can do a demo of how that utility works. The utility has provisions to ensure that those set of resources are actually preserved and are actually available when the user needs to do a recovery using the archive image copy, maybe after 10 years or 15 years. So, okay. Dom, if I have answered your question.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't do depersonalization. I didn't think it would, obviously, but I was just asking. Yeah, because that's a challenge that people do have when they're copying development live to development. That's all.
Right, but again, the use case that some of our customers came to us with was, hey, my testers come up with these requests from time to time. I build the environment for them, but they do their testing and they corrupt it, right? And again, I have to go through that entire painful process of restoring the environment for them.
Yeah, right? I get your use case. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. Perfect.
All right. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. So thanks very much indeed. So that's don't just leave it for a minute, just to see if anybody else wants any more questions, and Wendy or Simon or anybody else. No,
no, I'm fine, thanks. Thank you. Interesting.
Okay, thanks, Simon, and thanks, Wendy, for attending. Yeah, so just do the votes with the QR code for the.
I'll move to that. Move to the slide. Yeah, over here.
And thanks very much, everybody, for your attendance. And yeah, the QR code for the feedback will be gratefully appreciated. If you could fill that out, that would be fantastic. And we've got one more session to go, which is in about half an hour. So you're more than welcome to join us on that one as well, which is about IMS Connect, features of IMS Connect. So without further ado, I'll hand this back and close the session. But thanks very much for doing the presentations, Subhadash, and thanks for your active attendance today. Have a good afternoon and evening.
Yeah, bye.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for attending. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.